Hello guys, my name is Vijay. I am working as Senior Lead Engineer in Epicero. In this session, let us go ahead discussing about Mulesoft interview questions from 31 to 40. I have created 30 questions on the Mulesoft interview questions already, say 7 months ago. You can go through all these three videos and you can resume watching this video. So uh, these are the 10 questions that I'll be discussing in this particular video. So let's go ahead. The first question is, what is authentication and authorization? So authentication is the process of checking who you are. Authorization is the process of checking what permissions do you have. If you see here, right, uh, this guy is the user and he'll log into the Anypoint platform, right? So he needs to have the credentials. So that is what we call as authentication. If he enters wrong credentials, right, that it's an authentication failure. Now once he logs in successfully, what are all the features uh, he can access once he logins, right? That comes under authorization. Okay, always authentication comes before authorization. So this is the first part and this is the second part, right? If you see, this is the snap which I took. uh, I mean, this is my real-time Anypoint platform, enterprise Anypoint platform. If you see here, I don't have access to the access management. Now let's see the same uh, as a small demo. So this is where the authentication will happen, the username and password. So click on sign in. So once you sign in, right, if you see, these are the features that I can access within Anypoint platform. Okay, so uh, I hope that it is clear what is authentication and what is authorization. Let's go to the next question. Anypoint Studio version, comma Mule version. So interviews might ask you what is the version of the studio that you are working and the Mule runtime version that you are working. So in that case, you can specify the corresponding versions that you are using currently in the real time. If not, if they ask you the latest versions, you have to mention that the recent version of Anypoint Studio is 7.14 and Mule runtime is 4.4. So by the time I'm creating this video, these are the latest. So I have mentioned these, and by the time you go for the interview, you need to understand what is the recent Anypoint Studio version and the Mule runtime version, and that is what you have to convey to the interviewer. Okay, so let's go ahead with the next question. What will be the expected output if all the conditions in the choice router comes out to be valid? Now, choice router is a we will have a number of conditions, right, based upon our requirement. Now, by any chance, for the given input or for the given test case, right, if all the um, conditions are satisfying, so where the control will go, that is the question. Now, as we know that the choice router works in such a way that, okay, first it will check if this particular condition uh, is succeeding or not. If it is obeying, then this particular route will get executed and all the other routes will be ignored, and it continues. Now if this condition is not satisfied, the control will shift to the next route, and if it works here, all good, and it ignores the other two, and it goes on. So for this question, the answer is that in this particular case, only the first route will be executed. We'll see the same as part of demo. So I have created this application, and I have deployed this in debug mode. Okay. Now you can understand, right? Payload.age is less than 100, less than 50, and less than 25, and it's a default logger. So here I am printing age that we are passing from the postman, and here I am simply printing age is less than 100, here age is less than 50, and so on. Okay, now let me go to postman and send this request. So we'll see the execution in the debug mode. Okay, here Now the control is at this point. Let me click on next. So it has printed age as 10 because that is what I have sent through my postman request. Now you see if I click on next processor, right? So this the control has come here and we are good. We are done. Okay, so this is simple. Age is less than 100 and that is the logger that got printed from this particular choice route, and we got successful response as well. That is the payload, which is a default HTTP response for success. Okay, we have covered this. Let's go ahead with the next question. So difference between API manager and runtime manager. So if someone asks you this question, right, you can simply mention what you do in API manager and I mean what is the use of API manager and when you'll use runtime manager. If you specify the details regarding these two, right, that should be sufficient. Okay, so Anypoint API manager is a component of Anypoint platform that enables you to manage, govern and secure APIs. You can go through more information in this link. And if you talk about runtime manager, right, Anypoint runtime manager is the interface to Anypoint platform that provides a unified view of your application, servers and APIs. So let's see the same in the Anypoint platform of my trial account. So let's go to the runtime manager. Let me open API manager as well in a new tab. Yeah. So this is a very new account. I haven't deployed any Mule applications as of now, but we'll deploy one Mule application in the for the. I mean, we are going to discuss the next questions, right? So I'll deploy a Mule application at that time. So if we talk about runtime manager, this is where you deploy Mule applications, and also you can create servers for on-premise, and you can create alerts for the different Mule applications or group of Mule applications, and also you can create VPCs and private spaces, load balances, all these features, right? We have here. So you can create all this stuff per environment. If you click here, right, it will display you the different environments that we have in the runtime manager, or you whatever the access, whatever the environments you have the access, right? Sometimes you might not have access to view the production environment. So based upon the access that you are given, you'll be able to see those environments only, and all these features are per environment. Okay, so that way, yeah. So runtime manager is to deploy your Mule applications, to manage the Mule applications and create the servers, create the alerts, the VPCs and load balancers, etc. Now, if we talk about API manager, again, this is per environment. Uh, I mean, if you have test environment, prod environment, or staging environment, you'll find 3 or 4 different API managers based on the environment. Okay, and here what we do, we generally create APIs. Okay, click on add API, and if you add a new API, whatever the APIs that you have already published to the exchange, right, they will be available. Or you can also upload, import an API from the zip file. So once you import the APIs or API specification, right, here by using the auto discovery process, API auto discovery process, right, you can link up the interface and the implementation, and that way you can apply the policies within the API manager on the API. So you can apply different kinds of policies. You see here we have different categories of policies: security, quality of service, transformation, troubleshooting. So these policies you can apply, and um, I mean, if someone, once you publish or make your API as a public, right, someone can send a access request. So all those requests will come under the contracts, and also you can create alerts and SLA treats. Okay, and also here we'll see this part in the coming questions. I mean, okay, so API manager is to handle. You can create APIs and you can secure the APIs, govern the APIs, and you can apply different policies and all. So this is what we do in the API manager. So let's go ahead with the next question. How can you validate JSON and XML in Mule? So these two are file formats, right? JSON and XML, these two are file formats. Now, if you receive JSON and XML file through HTTP, I mean, if you create a REST API and if you receive them via HTTP call from sender, right? Then you can have an API specification, right? So if the data exchange happens via HTTP in a synchronous manner, okay, you can have an API specification that is either a RAML or OS or Vistal, okay, and you can validate through it. So if I show you a sample API specification, right? Yeah, let's go through this. So this is the API specification where you can have uh, data type. You'll have data type, okay, and you can create the same for XML as well, and you can parse the input content against this particular data type like this, okay, for JSON and XML. When you receive the data through HTTP. Now, for example, if you don't receive the data through HTTP, what you can do, let's say you are receiving through PubSub model or through queues from one application to another application, right? Mule application, I mean. So in that case, what you can do, you can use JSON and XML modules in your Mule application to validate the JSON and XML data using schemas. So on this particular part, I have explained the same in this particular video, validate XML and JSON files. So you can go through this. If I have to show you a little on this, right, you have to import two modules. One is JSON module. Let me check if that is available here. It's not there. Let me add it from the exchange. Yeah. If you see here, we have validate schema, so you can add this to your canvas and you can prepare some JSON schema. And here you can, yeah, here also we have validate schema, right? Here you can import or upload the XSD. You see schemas here, so that way you can validate XML file as well. And this is for JSON. You can refer JSON schema here, and you can give input JSON input to this one and XML input to this one, and they will be validated against the schemas. Let's go ahead with the next question. What is fragment in RAML? So the definition is an API fragment is a RAML document that has a version and an identifier, but it is not in itself a complete RAML specification. So these are the examples for different fragments in RAML: trait, resource type, library type, example, etc. So let's see a bit on the same in the design center. So I have created one example fragment. So in order to create a fragment, right, so click on create new and click on new fragment. So when you click on this, right, you have to name the fragment. Let's say I'll keep it as a trait, and you can select the trait. Whatever the fragment type you are creating, you have to put a relevant name of the same. And you see we have 8 different fragments. All these are fragments: trait, resource type, library, data type, all these. So why we create external fragments? Because if you can use a particular fragment as a reusable component across multiple APIs, right, you can create an external fragment. If not, you can create within the API specification itself. Let's say this is the sample API specification which I have created. Within this itself, we can create a fragment. So if I click on this, right, click on new file. Now here itself we can create the fragments. See, we have everything here: trait, resource type, right? So you can create any kind of thing. So this is within API specification you can create if the fragment is not a reusable component. Now, as we discussed, right, this is the fragment which I have created. It is just a simple example with a key value pair. Now, if you go through this exchange.json, right, here you could see the version of this fragment and the asset ID, some unique information like group ID and the name of this particular fragment. All this information you can see, and you can also publish this to exchange. So I have already published to the exchange, and you could see if I zoom in, right, yeah, this is the API spec fragment and the name of this one, and who is the publisher, and what is the version, uh, what is the latest version, and you can see some documentation also if you add some documentation to the same, I mean the description. Okay, so we discussed about fragment. Let's go ahead with the next question. So API kit router and API console. About API kit router, right? It generates flows from the API specification, validates the incoming request, and also helps in routing the request to the specific flows of the API. And let's see about API console as well. API console is a component shows information about your REST APIs and their methods, and enables users to test the methods by sending requests. So let's see a demo on the same thing. So I have imported the API specification which I was showing you in the design center. So this is the API specification BMS-SAPI, and the same API specification I have imported within the Anypoint Studio. I have created it as a Mule application. Okay, so this is how it is looking like. So we have two components. One is console here, that is this one. The other is API kit router. Okay, now if we discuss about API kit router, right, what it will do, it will actually, this is the one that generates the flows for us based upon the API specification, and also whatever the incoming request to this listener, right, this will validate based upon the uh, data type or the validation rules that we have in the API specification with respect to headers or query parameters or URI parameters, right? And what it will do, based upon the request to a particular endpoint, it will route to the corresponding flow that it is framing like this, like get slash movies, movie slash tickets. It's a post HTTP call, so it will understand to which flow that particular request has to be routed to, and it will route to the corresponding flow. Okay, so this is the responsibility of API kit router. And if we discuss about API kit console, right, uh, let me deploy this application and we'll see the purpose of this console. So we generally use Postman, right, to test the application, but you can also test the application uh, by hitting or by sending a request to this particular console. The application got deployed, so I have cleared the console. Let me hit enter here. You see, so you could see all the endpoints here, API endpoints, and this we are able to see within the UI itself. Okay, and if you click on this, how the sample request should look like and how the sample response will be, so all these things you'll get to know here. Now if I click on summary, right, I click on post, and the same way for post as well. So API console is something, you see, it's an interactive API console component, shows information about your REST APIs and their methods. Okay, and enables the users to test the methods by sending requests. So let's send a request to this one. Let me click on send, because it is just a get request, right? Okay, so here you see we got three movies because I have changed the implementation here. Okay, Avatar 2 and Avatar 3. So these are the three movies. So that is why we got this particular response. And if you can also send a request to this particular endpoint as well, movie slash tickets. Okay, so let's go ahead with the next question. That is, what is an API auto discovery? So we know, right? I mean, with the help of this concept, we'll be able to pair the API or the API specification in API manager and the application that we deploy to the runtime manager, right? We can pair them, and we can secure the APIs through the API manager. Okay. Um, and how can you register an API in API manager? So this is one of the interview questions. It is very similar or close to the previous question. So yeah, you have to use API ID and the client ID and client secret of Anypoint platform specific environment. If you are deploying to dev environment, you have to get the Anypoint platforms devs client ID and client secret, or to if you are deploying to staging or test environment, you have to get the corresponding client ID and client secret along with the corresponding API ID or auto discovery ID. Okay, and all these three things you have to pass in the runtime manager or to the application as inputs uh, while you are deploying your Mule applications to the runtime manager, and then um, it will be registered in the API manager, or the API will be turned into active mode. So we'll see a common demo for both the questions. Now, okay. Now this is the simple as I have imported this, right? I did not do any further implementation. So apart from changing the movies to, I have simply added this one. Now what I will do, um, okay, let me add a yeah, we have to add API Auto Discovery here, and we have to point this to the main uh, main flow where we'll get the requests. Okay, so that is BMS API main, and here let's put this property as API.id. Okay, click on OK. Now save it. So what we can do, um, let me copy this one. I'll put it in a notepad. Yeah, so let me create a jar file out of this. Click on export. What I will do, I'll save this on the desktop. Finish. Now let's go to the runtime manager of the Anypoint platform. Uh, Before this, right, what I will do, you can get the corresponding environments client ID and client secret in the API manager itself. So because I will be deploying to the sandbox, so I'll get the client ID and client secret of the sandbox environment. So this is the client ID, copy, and you can copy paste there, and client secret, that is this one. So all these things, and you also have to pass API ID. So for that we have to create an entry in the API manager. So click on add a new API, and for now you can choose Mule gateway. Click on next, and this is the API that I was showing you. I have published this to the exchange. You see this one, BMS-SAPI, and the version is 1.0.0. So select this and click on next for the time being. Next and finish. Save. Okay. Now we got API instance ID. So this instance ID you can copy, and what you can do, you can pass this through the runtime manager. Okay, so we are good till here. Now go to the runtime manager and uh, go to sandbox, because we have created API in the API sandbox API manager, right? So we have to deploy this application in the sandbox only. Now let me put a name to this application like EMS 31st. Okay, yeah, all good. Now I'll deploy to the Cloud Hub 1.0. So click on choose file, upload file. This is the happy. Now in the properties, right, what you can do, you can pass all these properties. So once you deploy this application, right, what happens is that so for the time being, the API is not registered. It is in the unregistered state. Now, once it gets deployed, right, successfully, this will be successfully registered, or it will become active. It will turn into green in color. See, it turned into active mode. It took some time. Not sure what was the reason. But now this way we can register our API in the API manager. So um, this particular question is answered. Now let's go ahead with this one and let's talk a bit on this. So by using this API auto discovery concept, right? So we are able to, uh, we are able to pair the API interface or the API specification and the API implementation that we deployed in the runtime manager. Okay. Now what we can do, so let me copy this thing and go to Postman. What I will do, okay, yeah. So let me send the request. So we are able to get the movies, right? Now what I will do, I'll send a post request to the same slash tickets. So if I send this, right, we'll get a bad request, unsupported media type. Okay, that is because it is expecting application type JSON body, but because we did not send any body, right, it responded with 415. So let me frame the request, and what I will do, I'll copy the example. So go click on send. So we'll get proper response, that is 201. Now if I send the same thing, right, like this, it will throw something like bad request because it is expecting this to be an integer. So now, if you want to apply some policies, right, what you can do, you can apply some policy. Um, yeah. So I'll quickly assign some policy like client ID enforcement. Yeah. Now click on next. Okay. Click on apply. That's it. Now within the exchange, right? If you go to exchange, what we can do, we can click on share and make it as a public API. Okay. Now go to public portal, and here from here you can click on request access. Now yeah, this is the instance of the sandbox, right? So just click on create new application. Let's say click on create. Now click on request access. So here itself it will display the client ID and client secret. Now client ID we have copied and client secret we have copied here. So let's pass the same from the headers of the postman. So now what we can do, click on send. See now, because we have applied client ID enforcement policy, we were getting something like 401 unauthorized. Okay, so let's pass the client ID and client secret. Uh, Let me pass the client ID and client secret. So now let me click on send. It's a bad request because it should be an integer as per the API specification. So let me send this. Yeah, now we got successful response. So this is how you can secure your APIs by applying some policies within the API manager. And before that, right, you have to use API auto discovery process to pair up your API specification and the implementation or the Mule application that you are deploying to the runtime manager. Okay, So I hope you understood this API auto discovery process, and also how can you register an API in API manager. This also we have seen. I hope you have understood both the things. Let's go ahead with the final question for the session. That is, what is the purpose of Munits? So we, as a developers, work on Munits very often. So Munits will help in unit testing the Mule application flows. It helps in mocking the external services as well. So let's say you're sending some requests through HTTP request to some external, to let's say to SAPI or PAPI or some external system, okay, which is not in our control. So we can use mock-when to simulate the output or to replace that particular processor with the mock response that we get from that system or the other Mule application. Okay, and it also helps to find the problems early in the development cycle and fix them quickly. So sometimes we might not be able to test few test cases. So in that case, right, we can use mock-when and we can simulate the responses from the end systems and understand if the rest of the flow is working or not. So that way you can validate all your Mule flows within your Mule application by creating many test cases. And in real time, right, you have to at least achieve 70 to 80 percentage coverage of your Mule application. I mean the minute coverage. Okay, so the more you cover as part of minutes, the more good it is. So here, if I show you, right, we have two test cases got executed and both are good. There are no errors at all and there are no failures at all. And you could see the overall coverage is 100%, and these two files got covered completely. Okay, so it will also, if you click on generate report, right, it will generate some HTML file by default, and you can see which Mule configuration file got covered by which percentage, by what percentage and all. Okay, so that's it from my side for this session. I will come up with few more questions in the next video. Thank you so much.